Hello everyone, welcome to Archo again. Today's terrifying story has been sent to us from a small part of Europe by someone who has asked not to reveal their name. And remember, if you ever experience something truly horrifying or suspenseful, you can share your story with us at archo.story@gmail.com. Now, let's go straight into today's deep scary incident. It was late September when Lucas, a 27-year-old student living in Vienna, decided to take a weekend trip to the countryside with his fiancée, Clara, and their two friends, Jonas and Emilia. The four of them had been drowning in stress, classes, jobs, deadlines. They wanted an escape. Somewhere peaceful. Somewhere nobody else would think to go. Lucas had read about a hidden lake in the Salzkammergut region. Few people knew about it, and those who did rarely visited. Online, someone had called it Europe's forgotten gem. Photos showed a mirror-like body of water surrounded by dense forest and towering mountains. It looked untouched, pristine, almost magical. But when Lucas mentioned the plan to locals in the nearest town, their reactions were uneasy. A grocer with trembling hands told him flatly, "Don't go there. Especially not at night. That lake is not for the living." Another villager, a woman in her 70s, pulled Clara aside and whispered, "If you hear voices calling, no matter what, don't answer. Do not look at them. Do not step into the water." Of course, the four laughed it off. Folklore, they thought. Every small town had its ghost stories. It only made the adventure more exciting. By late afternoon, they reached the lake. The air felt colder here, heavier. Pines leaned over the water, their reflections sharp and perfect on the surface. The lake itself looked like black glass, so still that not a single ripple broke across it. Even when the wind moved through the trees, the surface remained unchanging. "Beautiful," Clara whispered. "Creepy," Emilia muttered, wrapping her arms around herself. They pitched their tents, lit a fire, and opened a bottle of wine. For hours, they laughed, shared stories, and stared at the glittering stars overhead. The silence of the lake was comforting at first, but as the night deepened, that silence became heavy, almost suffocating. It began with a sound. At first Lucas thought it was the wind carrying faint noises across the valley. But then he froze. It wasn't the wind. It was whispering. So faint at first he thought he imagined it, like dozens of tiny voices echoing just below the surface of the water. He leaned forward, listening. Clara noticed. "What is it? Do you hear that?" They all went quiet. The fire cracked. Somewhere in the forest, a branch snapped. And then, unmistakably, the whispers rose again. Dozens of voices, bubbling, gurgling, as though spoken from mouths filled with water. Then came the words. "Lucas." The blood drained from his face. "What the hell?" Jonas muttered. The whispers continued. Slowly, carefully, the voices spoke all of their names. Clara. Emilia. Jonas. Lucas. One after another, whispered from the still surface of the lake. The fire sputtered, as if reacting to the sound. "That's enough," Emilia said, forcing a laugh. It's some kind of echo, right? A trick with the wind." But Lucas's skin prickled. No echo knew their names. Still, they tried to ignore it. They piled wood onto the fire and talked loudly, trying to drown out the sounds. But the laughter never felt real again. Their eyes kept darting back to the lake, its black surface reflecting the firelight too perfectly. At midnight, Lucas finally crawled into his tent beside Clara. Exhaustion pulled at him. For a while, the whispers faded. Silence returned. Until he woke again at 2 a.m. The fire was dead. The night was unnaturally still. And then he heard it, the sound of footsteps. Not heavy boots. Not animal paws. Bare feet. Small. Wet. Slapping against the earth. Slow. Careful. Circling their tents. His heart pounded. He unzipped the tent just an inch. Moonlight bathed the shore. And there, standing ankle deep in the water, was a child. No older than 6. Pale skin. Drenched clothing clinging to its body. Hair plastered across its face. The child stared directly at him, eyes rolled completely white. When it smiled, water trickled from its mouth, dripping steadily onto the ground. Lucas froze, too terrified to breathe. Then he noticed something worse. There were more of them. Half a dozen children stood side by side in the lake, motionless, their heads tilted slightly, their lips moving though no sound came out. He zipped the tent shut, shaking Clara awake. His voice was a harsh whisper, "Don't make a sound. Don't move." Jonas and Emilia stirred too. They all sat in darkness, listening. The wet footsteps grew closer. Slapping. Dragging. Circling. Then came the scratching. Tiny nails dragging slowly down the fabric of the tents. A sound so sharp and deliberate it made Emilia sob quietly into her hands. Jonas gripped a flashlight and clicked it on. For 1 second, light filled the tent. Then it flickered and died. The temperature dropped instantly. Their breath came out in clouds. Clara clutched Lucas's arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. And then, silence. Minutes passed. Hours, maybe. When dawn finally touched the lake, Lucas opened the tent. The children were gone. But in the mud all around their campsite were hundreds of barefoot prints. Tiny, perfect, circling the tents in endless rings. They left immediately. But fate wasn't done with them. By the second evening, Clara was gone. Her shoes sat by the shore. Her footprints led straight into the water. They found her waist deep in the lake, her back to them, her lips moving in a silent chant. "Clara!" Lucas shouted, rushing forward. But Jonas grabbed him. "Wait. Look." From beneath the surface, pale arms were rising. Dozens. Then dozens more. Tiny figures emerging from the lake, children, their faces bloated, their mouths spilling water, their eyes rolled white. They stood chest deep, shoulder to shoulder, hundreds of them. Watching. Waiting. And then, in one unified voice, they spoke. "Stay with us, forever." Clara turned, her eyes blank, her face expressionless. She took another step deeper. Jonas and Lucas lunged, grabbing her arms, trying to pull her back. But the children moved forward in unison. Their hands, cold, slimy, impossibly strong, wrapped around Clara, pulling, dragging her toward the depths. Emilia screamed as more figures crawled onto the shore, their wet feet slapping against the earth. Some were missing chunks of skin. Some had jaws unhinged at impossible angles. All of them reaching. Lucas fought. He pulled. He screamed Clara's name until his throat burned. But the water swallowed her, dragging her under. Her final cry gurgled with bubbles. And then she was gone. The children stopped. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then, slowly, they all turned their heads in unison, toward Lucas, Jonas, and Emilia. And they smiled. The 3 fled. Branches tore at their skin as they ran through the forest. Behind them, faint laughter bubbled through the air, the sound of children underwater. By dawn, they stumbled into the village. The locals didn't ask questions. They only shook their heads. "You were warned," the old woman whispered. "The children of the lake do not forgive. They drowned long ago. And now they wait for others to join them." Clara's body was never recovered. Authorities searched, divers explored, but the lake gave up nothing. Not even a scrap of clothing. Months passed. Lucas tried to return to his life, but he was never the same. He avoided mirrors. He avoided bathtubs. He avoided even the smallest puddles. Because at night, when he closes his eyes, he still hears her voice. Clara. Calling from somewhere deep below the surface. And always, always, beneath her voice is the sound of dozens of children laughing.